acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the lands of Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional lands of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we, as the beneficiaries of the treaty, must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Mr. Acting Mayor, we do not have a supplementary agenda this evening, and rules for the council chambers. Rules for decorum at council meetings. The municipality of Chatham-Kent supports open meetings that welcome debate of public policy issues in an atmosphere that is inclusive, integrity, civility, fairness, and respect for differing points of view. Anyone conducting themselves in a way that disturbs, disrupts, or impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting, interrupts or makes derogatory statements or hate speech, defamatory comments about councillors, staff, speakers, or fellow members of the public may result in the removal from the premise. The use of posters, signage, and literature is also prohibited. Disclosures of pecuniary interest. We have one, Councillor Story, on item 11G, the Clark and Nelson Development, Marlborough Street North and Nazarene Road, community of Blenheim. We'll hand it over now to Planning Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The process to be followed for each application will be as follows. 1, the clerk will announce each individual planning item. 2, the mayor will ask if there is anyone present other than the applicant and or their agent with an interest in the application and to indicate so by raising their hand. 3, the clerk will advise if anyone is present virtually wishing to speak to the application or if written or video submissions have been received. 4, if someone other than the applicant or the applicant's agent indicates an interest in the item, there will be a presentation by administration. 5, individuals with an interest in the application other than the applicant will be asked to proceed to the podium, provide their name and address, and address council. 6, the applicant will be asked if they wish to proceed to the podium and address council. 7, administration will be asked if they have any comments based on any discussion that may have occurred. And 8, council will be asked what action it wishes to take with regard to the item. Notice, if any person or public body that files an appeal of decision of council in respect to the proposed applications does not make oral or written submissions to the municipal clerk before the proposal is approved, they are not entitled to appeal a decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If otherwise eligible, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party to the appeal. Information on council's actions tonight will be posted on the municipal website. All persons who have made a request or who have made oral or written submission regarding a particular planning item will receive a notice of council's decision, including appeal procedures. Any other person who wishes to receive a notice of decision must submit a written request to the municipal clerk. Thank you.
We'll start with Planning Services A, South Wheatley Secondary Plan. Anthony, if you can please introduce Amy. Gabriel, if you can please introduce Amy, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, Mr. Chair. As you're aware, we are here tonight to present the draft South Wheatley Secondary Concept Report, which contains draft policies that are proposed to guide the development of South Wheatley over the next several years. The Imagine Wheatley project, as this land use planning project has become known, traces its origins to Council's 2020 strategic plan. Upon receiving Council's direction to initiate the development of a land use plan for South Wheatley, Dillon Consulting was retained through a request for proposal process to help with key aspects of the project. Dillon is a Canadian employee-owned professional consulting firm specializing in planning, engineering, environmental sciences, and management. And joining us tonight from Dillon is Amy Farkas. Amy is an associate team manager and senior planner with Dillon Consulting, with nearly 10 years of experience in municipal planning and over 15 years of experience in project management. She holds a master's degree in urban planning from Wayne State University in Detroit and is a full member of the Canadian Institute of Planners and is a registered professional planner. In her role as consulting planning team leader for the project, Amy provided oversight and coordinated activities undertaken by the consulting planning firm including analysis, land use policy development, and stakeholder engagement activities. So with that, I will turn it over to Amy to walk everyone through the main elements of the Imagine Wheatley project. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gabriel, and good evening, Mr. Chair and members of council. So you did have a presentation. I don't want to break anything.
Should be in the slide
Oh,
deck.
there we
Yeah.
go. Wonderful.
Should be able to just move forward with that.
Great, thank you so much. All right. Excuse my technical difficulties here. All right. And so, yeah, as Gabriel mentioned, I was the project manager and lead planner for the Imagine Wheatley project. And just to give you a little bit of an overview of how we got here and where we're at. So South Wheatley has the potential to grow and develop. This growth potential was recognized by council as a priority initiative of the municipality's growth strategy, as Gabriel noted. And this resulted in the initiation of the Imagine Wheatley project, a land use and servicing strategy for the lands located in the southerly portion of the community of Wheatley. A secondary plan is a land use plan for a particular area of the municipality that is prepared as an amendment to an official plan. A land use plan would identify an appropriate and aligned strategy to guide the future development of the area, as well as opportunities for land uses that will contribute to the community's vibrancy through new residential, commercial, employment, and open space opportunities. The servicing strategy identifies the infrastructure investments that are required to enable the area to develop in a phased manner. So the intent of the Imagine Wheatley project is to set a 20-plus year vision for the development of the area and to guide public and private investment. Other goals of the plan include the protection of significant environmental features, the identification of new public space uses, and the creation of a plan that would benefit the entire community of Wheatley. The Imagine Wheatley process is and was a deliberate, collaborative, and transparent public process with extensive stakeholder engagement occurring to understand the challenges and the opportunities of the project area, as well as to gain insight on the community's vision for Wheatley as a whole. In consultation with the Wheatley Recovery Task Force, messaging throughout the engagement process was sensitive of the adverse impacts experienced by the Wheatley residents in the aftermath of the August 2021 explosion in the downtown core. Throughout the process, the project team was also cognizant that the success of the plan for South Wheatley would be dependent upon the downtown recovery. The land uses being proposed in the plan are intended to be complementary to and not compete with those in the downtown core. In terms of the project timeline, the planning process was initiated in late 2021 and includes 4 main phases, the first being our background review and project initiation. The second, the existing conditions, and this involved the review of existing policies, an assessment of the natural heritage areas, and the first stakeholder and community engagement event. Phase 3 was our preliminary land use and servicing concepts, which included synthesizing and analyzing all the information that we got from Phase 2, including stakeholder feedback. And this helped to inform a series of preliminary land use servicing concepts. So at that time, a second PIC was held to get feedback on those concepts, with this input directly informing the preparation of the preferred land use and servicing concepts. Phase 4 is where we are now and includes the development of the secondary plan concept report, which is before you this evening, which contains specific policies that align directly with the draft guiding principles and a draft vision for South Wheatley. Phase 4 also includes the following steps. So the statutory public meeting, which is tonight, finalization of the concept report, and council adoption of the South Wheatley secondary plan through an amendment to the Chatham-Kent official plan. There are a number of engagement opportunities in each phase of the project, providing opportunities for people to participate through the various milestones. So in round 1, which is our existing conditions, is where we engaged with stakeholders on key topics, risks, challenges, and opportunities. that would form the plan and the land use concept. And this gave us an understanding of the community's vision for the area. So our virtual PAC was originally scheduled for May 18th, 2022, but was rescheduled to September 27th, 2022 to provide some time for the community to focus on recovery efforts associated with the downtown explosion. This event was attended by approximately 74 members of the public, and this was, again, it was a virtual open house. Phase 2 was the preliminary land use and servicing concepts, and this is where we presented on and received feedback on the preliminary land use and servicing concepts. This virtual PIC was held on December 6, 2022, and it had approximately 50 members. There were also written correspondences and individual stakeholder and agency consultation that took place that helped to inform the development of the preferred land use and servicing concept. So right now we are in, as I mentioned, the third round of the secondary plan engagement and the fourth phase of this project, where we are presenting the preferred land use and servicing concepts. So in round one, we received valuable input on a number of themes, including places to live and the need for diverse, affordable, and adequate housing for first-time home buyers, as well as for seniors so that they could age in place and remain in the community. There was interest in local shops and services, as well as healthcare amenities. Participants also wanted to see space for youth and children and natural spaces that connect to existing natural amenities. And lastly, there was also consensus that the existing natural heritage areas and wildlife habitat be protected. However, seeing opportunities here for passive recreation. Oh, there we go. So with the amalgamation of the comments and feedback we received, a vision was developed to define the ideas, principles, and goals and objectives used to determine the manner, rate, and built form in which the study area would develop. So as you can see, we do have the proposed vision for South Wheatley. So the development of South Wheatley will be structured with people at the center, people of all ages and abilities. We'll be able to call the neighborhood home. We'll be able to call the neighborhood home a community where opportunities for enjoying a high quality of life abound through a range of homes, a variety of recreational amenities, and public gathering spaces, and a well-planned active transportation network. The development will be nestled within the area's unique local environment and complement the wider Wheatley community. Natural amenities and nature-based solutions will be foundational to the community's design, and the land use plan will provide appropriate opportunities for commercial and employment uses to serve neighborhood residents in all of Wheatley. Ultimately, the neighborhood will become a desirable, complete community where people from all stages of life can live, work, and play, and are proud to be a part of. 4 guiding principles were also identified to guide development and growth within the project area. New development will be provided to enhance market choice, provide affordable options, and introduce supportive local commercial uses to service the needs of residents. The neighborhood will be developed to include a wide range of public amenities to promote social and human connection and foster a sense of place. Opportunities to promote healthy and active lifestyles by integrating active transportation connections, providing and leisure facilities, and ensuring the streets balance all modes of transportation. And measures to reduce the impacts of development on the environment by integrating nature into new developments, including stormwater management, climate resiliency, and measures to preserve and enhance key environmental features. Preliminary land use and servicing concepts were prepared in consultation with the municipality and, as noted earlier, with agency and stakeholder input. In addition to the essential feedback, an environment-first approach was taken to create the base map and land use concepts with the identification of natural heritage areas of environmental significance. A constraints-based approach was also taken to identify the buffer of the Wheatley Water Pollution Control Plant central to the project area and compatibility considerations with the industrial employment lands. The base map was also informed by the existing policies of the OP and a number of background documents, including the Chatham-Kent Development Charges Report, which provided the anticipated population and non-residential growth forecasts. And this helps to determine and inform the densities that the project area could accommodate. The preferred land use alternative shown here was developed based on stakeholder feedback provided during the PIC the comments provided by landowners, the municipality, and the conservation authorities. The preferred land use alternative proposes the following designations for the South Wheatley Secondary Plan area, including residential area, neighborhood commercial center, highway commercial center, employment area, public facility area, open space, conservation lands, and identifying also those provincially significant wetlands. In addition to the land use designation, we have also made recommendations for the location of parkland and a neighborhood hub. Now, overlaid on top of the land use plan, you'll see here our active transportation plan, which proposes including new active transportation facilities along West Two Creeks Conservation Area and recommended future connections to that facility through the planning approval process. Other active transportation improvements that were proposed include strengthening existing active transportation facilities along Erie Street South and along Woodland Road and Detroit Line for system connectivity to connect into the planned AT facilities. We don't have it here actually on this overlay figure, but the road network recommendations also included upgrade and extension of McLean Road with a complete streets cross-section going from First Concession all the way up that McLean Road extension, and that's as per the Transportation Master Plan. Other recommendations include intersection improvements or review at Erie Street and McLean Road, and the potential for a new connection to Erie Street at the northern extent of the secondary plan area. The update to First Concession line is also part of the Transportation Master Plan and part of this recommendation. The project also includes a servicing strategy to support the development outlined in land use plan. In terms of sanitary sewers, with the Wheatley Water Pollution Control Plant being located in the middle of the plan area, there are numerous existing gravity mains with sufficient depth and capacity to accommodate new service requirements. The sanitary sewers will be able to follow any new road networks and connect to the existing infrastructure for both development parcels north and south of First Concession Line. With regard to water mains, the Wheatley Water Treatment Plant is located in the south west corner of the secondary plan area. There are numerous existing pressure mains with capacity to accommodate new service requirements. As with the sanitary sewers, the water mains will be able to follow any new road networks and connect to the existing infrastructure for both development parcels north and south of First Concession Line. And stormwater management, which was a key component and consideration of this process, we've incorporated policies into the secondary plan for the design of naturalized facilities that are integrated into the parks and the trail network. The recommended and preferred stormwater management strategy, as shown in this slide, includes 2 separate stormwater management facilities, which allows construction of the 2 largest land parcels to proceed independently. Build-out can occur in phases as development proceeds. This stormwater management option will also reduce the potential for servicing coordination and cost-sharing requirements. So within the secondary plan, it's intended that the development will take place in accordance with the land use patterns that were shown on the previous slides, in accordance with the policies in the plan. The next couple of slides provide a high-level overview of the policies for each of the land use designations, including the residential area, where we're proposing low density as well as some medium density uses, and then our neighborhood commercial center, which is convenience retail and service commercial uses. So these are kind of permitted to address any of the needs of the local residents. Highway commercial, more for people coming into South Wheatley from a tourist perspective and traveling down Erie Street South, and then employment area to be able to maintain some of those existing as-of-right uses that are there. Open space conservation area, that includes the provincially significant wetlands, the woodlands, parkland, and the stormwater management facilities. So next steps. So once adopted, the municipality will update its official plan with the secondary plan policies, as well as update its zoning bylaw to ensure the land use policies for South Wheatley are reflected in the municipality's zoning bylaw. And so that's it for my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions after the delegates have spoken.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Amy. I think before we get to deputations, we're going to open up to questions to council for you, for the presenter. So are there any questions from council, starting with Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. And I don't have any questions because I feel like there's been so much public consultation, not only to the general public, but also to other groups within the community that are key to making this all go smoothly. I just want to say that I think that this is really, really great. I'm looking forward to it. I think that, you know, when we have a town, our town, who right now is struggling quite a bit, to see that you still are predicting there to be growth there and that we can have something really fantastic to look forward to. I think that that definitely will lift the spirits of those of us that live in Wheatley, and it's something definitely that I'm happy to support moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll move into deputations, and I think, Judy, we have a couple that have expressed interest.
Yes, so I've had two that have contacted me this morning, so we'll start with Joseph DeRuscher, and on deck will be Howard Gabert.
Good evening. My name is Joe DeRocher. I live at 21208 Erie Street South in Wheatley. I'm the owner of the lands north of Concession Line 1, which is the largest area of land in the secondary plan, and it's the closest land to the downtown area of Wheatley. I'm here today to request council to approve the secondary plan with the following revisions for your consideration. I would ask that a small portion of the proposed highway commercial zoning on Erie Street South that I own be revised to a residential zoning for the purpose of a multifamily rental development. This land that I'm asking for revised zoning consists of approximately 2 acres. The portion of property that I'm asking to be revised to residential is the land north of the 50 by 80 shop building at 21064 Erie Street South, including the residential home at the same address. This location is a perfect site for a small rental development, as it would be a transitional land development between highway commercial and residential. As you can see on any of the maps, there's one property north of this location, a portion of property that we're asking to be revised, and it consists of another shop before the row of residential homes begins, giving the location we're asking to be revised for multifamily an additional buffer zone before residential homes begin. Directly across the road from the proposed revision is a large greenhouse facility that has bunk housing for workers at the Erie Street roadside, which is basically multifamily housing, making the site I'm asking to be revised a perfect location for a much-needed multifamily rental development. The second revision that I'm asking council to consider is to the land south of Concession Line 1 and west of Pickerel. I'm asking that these two properties be placed in a deferred development zoning. I understand that this may already happen, as there's been much talk on a phased approach to the secondary plan, but looking at the secondary plan as it's been presented shows these lands as residential zoning. My reasoning behind this request is based on several factors. Approximately 3 years ago, I approached the Chatham-Kent staff with a proposal for a large-scale multi-use development on the properties north of Concession Line 1 that included reviving and revising a draft plan that was before council on a large portion of this property approximately 20 years ago. As talks progressed, I hired an out-of-country engineer firm to complete a full-scale video rendering of the completed development. The University of Windsor approved our project to be worked on by several of their business students, as well as the professor, which resulted in a completed 34-page proposal, full-scale PowerPoint presentation, and lot mapping as part of their major semester project, which I was able to present to approximately 12 Chatham-Kent staff members. This proposal included a town square building with commercial and residential components. That would be a huge draw to Wheatley. Several different residential areas with different price points, commercial projects, apartment buildings, condo building, large conservation and park areas, etc. This presentation resulted in much excitement from CK and resulted in further talks and to where we are today. As we were preparing to submit applications for some zoning changes on portions of the properties, I was approached by the CK staff with the idea of a secondary plan for Wheatley, with one of the reasons being that there would need to be some municipal infrastructure spending as CK owns the road extension known as McLean Road. That needs to be completed for this development to proceed in an orderly fashion, as a municipal road extension goes right down the middle of this development. And it is also on top of the main trunk line sewer, sanitary sewer that goes directly to the pollution control plant. At the time of these discussion, I was never told that if, instead of simply applying for zoning changes on our property, that we agree to go on the route of a full secondary plan, that there could be possible plans for the property south of concession line 1 to come out of their current zoning and to be placed into a residential zoning. If that was the case, I wouldn't have been in agreement to work alongside the municipality in the long multi-year process that this has been to come up with the secondary plan for Wheatley. Although I agree with the long-term plans for these properties to be in a residential zoning and that they should be included in the secondary plan, I strongly feel that they should be placed in a deferred development zoning for the present time. I'm a resident of Wheatley and want with everything in me to bring much needed amenities and help be part of the rebuilding process into a town that has been devastated by the explosion, continual bad news, and now no working water treatment plant. If the land south of concession line 1 owned by out-of-town developers is given the residential zoning right away, it will flood Wheatley with excess residential zoning that is not needed for many years, making it a very difficult process for the rest of not only my projects, but the rest of the owners of current and future projects that already have residential zoning to successfully move forward. Wheatley has had approximately 10 to 20 new house starts per year for many years, and with the explosion in downtown situation, along with higher interest rates and a major downturn in the housing market, it has lowered those numbers considerably. I built only 2 homes in Wheatley last year, and 1 is still for sale. There were 17 townhomes built on Friendship Way. Because none of them were selling, they're now all available for rent. There's a townhouse development on Middleton Line that had 4 units built well over a year ago, and 2 are still sitting for sale. There's another single-family draft plan on Middleton Line that has been recently before council for approval. There are a few other properties with residential zoning, and with what we have begun in the town and are planning to do, there is more than sufficient residential land. At this time, Wheatley is not a place people are wanting to move to. We want to be a part of changing that perception and are willing to put our money where our mouth is. So we are asking council today to see and understand our position that what we have proposed with the size of a development in Wheatley comes with a huge financial risk. At this time, with such multi-year ongoing devastation to the downtown core, we're looking for council to agree to add the properties south of concession line 1.
That's time, sir. Sorry,
Okay.
council did receive your email, so they did receive the information.
All right.
Okay. Next speaker is Howard Gabert.
Okay, good evening, council. Thank you for the opportunity to address council on the Wheatley South Secondary Plan. My name is Howard Gabert, and I'm here with Jennifer Dawson, and we are here representing the Wheatley Task Force. Our group was formed in May 2022 with the goal of advocating for the long-term recovery of Wheatley following the explosion in the downtown core in August of 2021. The Wheatley South Secondary Plan was started prior to our group forming, but was first presented to the public under the Imagine Wheatley banner at roughly the same time as our group was founded. This plan is one that we have a strong interest in since it relates to the long-term recovery of the town. Many local residents have interpreted the secondary plan as one which will move the downtown businesses to this area, and we helped explain to the people that this is not the case. The recovery of the downtown core remains a top priority for the people of the town. Members of our group have participated in both of the public information sessions and have met with the primary developers of this plan. We have also received an in-person briefing from Gabriel Clark approximately 2 weeks ago, and we would like to thank Gabriel for taking the time to meet with us to explain the plan and hear our feedback. Our group would like to let council know that we support this plan. We feel that it meets the majority of the objectives of what our group has deemed as being key to the future vision of our town. It protects environmental corridors by retaining green space along the creek. It has a good plan for an active transportation network throughout the development for non-vehicle mobility and for recreation. The plan for commercial buildings integrates well with the residential areas. We feel that the planning department and the developer have a good plan for responsible growth. We would like to highlight one area which is outside of the planning region, but which needs to be considered. This new development needs to have good connections to the downtown core. There is currently not a safe way for pedestrians, cyclists, and assisted transportation users, to get from this area to the downtown core. A network is only as good as its weakest link, and the connection from this area to the downtown is currently high risk. We request that the planning and engineering groups review options to establish a multi-use pathway along Erie Street South from Middleton Line to McLean Road in parallel with this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other individuals or their agent present with an interest in the application other than the applicant? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll open it up for questions from council. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. I want to thank those that came to do their deputations tonight, Howard and Joe. Thank you very much. I want to thank Gabriel and Amy and their team for everything that they've done and all the work that they've put into this tonight. I'm happy to move the recommendation number 1 with further consideration to the deputations that we've heard tonight.
All right, moved by Councilor Anderson. Can I get a seconder? Councilor B. McGregor. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
And I'll go to the councilors on the call. Councilor McGrail
Yes.
and Councilor C. McGregor.
Yes.
Councilor Finn
Yes.
and Mayor Caniff.
Yes.
Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes 16-0. Moving on to item 11B, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment, Chatham Seniors Care, Inc., 9399 McNaughton Line, Community of Chatham Township, North Kent. Mr. Acting Mayor, we have no conflict of interest, and I did not receive any deputations via email today.
All right, is there any individuals or their agent present with an interest in the application other than the applicant? If you can please raise your hand.
Mr. Tony Verkuderen, did you want to speak to this one? I guess there's no one present.
All right, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Councilor Jubenville, can I get you to move that? And Councilor Doyle, can I get you a second?
Yes, I will so move.
Happy to second that.
All right, we have a mover and a seconder. Is there any questions from council? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councilor C. McGregor?
Yes.
Councilor McGrail?
Yes.
Councilor Finn?
Yes.
And Mayor Caniff.
Yes.
And all votes are in. Motion passes 17-0. 11C, application for zoning bylaw amendment, 2568029 Ontario, Inc., 35 Erie Street South and 12 and 18 Chestnut Street, Community of Wheatley, West Kent. Mr. Acting Mayor, we have a request from the applicant that this item be postponed until the October 23rd council meeting.
All right, thank you, Judy. Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, do I need to say this full motion, Judy, or just? Put that motion on. Okay. I, Councilor Anderson, put forward the following motion that the zoning bylaw amendment application file D-14 WH-47 23-0 be postponed to the October 23rd council planning meeting and that no further public notice is required.
Moved by Councilor Anderson, seconded by Councilor Sakachi. Is there any questions from council? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Counselor Finn,
Yes.
Mayor Caniff,
Yes.
Counselor McGrail,
Yes.
and Counselor C. McGregor.
Yes.
Counselor Crew, can I get you to vote? Thank you. All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0. 11D, application for zoning bylaw amendment 1000126008 Ontario Inc., 117 McGregor Street, Community of Blenheim, South Kent. There were no conflict of interest and no deputations were received by email.
Are individuals or their agent present with an interest in the application other than the applicant? If you can please raise your hand. Seeing none, mover and a seconder, Councilor Thompson and Councilor Doyle, can I get you moving second?
Moved.
I'll second that.
All right, moved and seconded. Is there any further questions from council? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Mayor Caniff,
Yes.
Counselor Finn,
Yes.
Counselor C. McGregor,
Yes.
and Counselor McGrail.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0. 11E, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment, Isaac and Maria Teschrow, 21291 Harbor Road, Community of Wheatley, West Kent. No conflict of interest, and we did have a deputation that I forwarded to council at the end of the day from Rory McCaw. I have nothing further.
Individuals or their agent present with an interest in the application other than the applicant, if you can please raise your hand. Seeing none, if I can get a mover and a seconder, Councilor Anderson and Councilor Wright, can I get you moving second?
I'm happy to move that.
I'll second it, thank you.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder. Is there any further questions from council? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councilor McGrail,
Yes.
Counselor C. McGregor,
Yes.
Counselor Finn,
Yes.
Mayor Caniff,
Yes.
Counselor Wright.
Thank you.
Thank you. Still. There we go. All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0. 11F, application for official plan amendment, OPA 78, zoning bylaw amendment and consent. Society of St. Vincent de Paul, Particular Council, Kent Deanery, 15142 Longwoods Road, Community of Zone, East Kent. I did not receive any conflict of interest nor deputations on this.
Thank you. Judy, individuals or their agent present with an interest in this application other than the applicant, if you can now please raise your hand. Seeing none, if I can get a mover and a seconder, Councilor Pinsino, moved by Councilor Pinsino.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. And I'd also like to remove 2C from the recommendation, which is the applicant pay $1,000 cash in lieu of parkland dedication. If I get a seconder, I'll explain that.
Councilor Wright, will you second that?
I'll second it, thank you.
Councilor Pinsino.
This organization is basically dividing these lots up because they need the money. And honestly, the $1,000 I don't think is going to make or break us in any way. And I think it's just nice to help. The St. Vincent de Paul, they took quite a battle over the COVID years. And anyway, they're asking if we can waive this. So I'm going to remove that from that, and we'll see where that goes.
Thank you, Councilor Pinsino. Any further questions from Councilor Allen?
Yeah, just kind of mimic what Steve said. These guys, pretty much all volunteers who run this camp, and this $1,000 would pretty much have to come out of their pockets. So yeah, happy to second that.
All right, thank you. Is there further questions from council on this? All right, seeing no other questions from council, we'll put it to vote.
So to the ones on the call, we are not putting 2C into the motion. So Councillor Finn,
Yes.
Councillor McGrail,
Yes.
Councillor Carmen McGregor,
Yes.
and Mayor Caniff.
Yes.
All votes are in, motion passes 17-0. And the final planning application is 11G, application for zoning bylaw amendment, Clark and Nelson Developments, Inc., Balmoral Street North and Nazarene Road, Community of Blenheim, South Kent. We have one conflict of interest from Councillor Story. Are there any other conflict of interest? See none. Deputation, we have two that were received by email, Leonard Verhart and Neil Mulder. So we'll go to presentation first.
I will start with a presentation from Ryan Jocks.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. The subject lands for this application are located in the community of Blenheim. These are historically within the urban plan for the community of Blenheim, primarily planned for residential uses. The property consists of approximately 45 acres at the west edge of the town. In April of 2022, Council received and considered an official plan amendment application for this same property from the same applicant today. The official plan amendment at the time in April of 2022, the thrust of it really was to add policies to permit high-density residential uses along the south side of Nazarene Road, between Nazarene Road and the CSX rail line. Subsequent to Council approving that official plan amendment, the decision of Council was appealed by a neighbor. That appeal substantially concluded by the end of 2022, and in January of this year, the Ontario Land Tribunal issued a decision dismissing the appeal, at which point the bylaw to adopt the official plan amendment went into effect. So since that time, the applicant and the prospective developer has worked on finalizing some of the details of their proposed plan of subdivision, and at this time, they've applied for a zoning bylaw amendment application to implement zoning in the zoning bylaw consistent with the policies approved by Council last year. So the intent of the zoning application is to implement a low-density residential zone to permit single detached and semi-detached dwellings, to implement the high-density residential zone to allow residential apartment buildings on the south side of Nazarene Road, to allow some neighborhood commercial zoning at the intersection of Marlborough Street North, as well as open space zoning at the locations of the proposed new municipal parkland, as well as the stormwater management facility. For reference of Council, the conceptual draft plan of subdivision is presented on the screen. There are some minor changes from what Council was presented in 2022, and it is still possible some minor changes could happen to this plan as the developer concludes their draft plan of subdivision application, which I anticipate would be submitted if the zoning application is successful. In general, the draft plan of subdivision sets out lots to accommodate up to 174 single-detached or semi-detached homes. It would also accommodate several acres of land on the south side of Nazarene Road, which would accommodate new residential apartment buildings. A new approximately 1.3 hectare neighborhood park is included at the east end of the property near the intersection of Nazarene Road and Middle Line, and the stormwater management facility would be located at the west side of the property adjacent to the CSX Railway and Fargo Road. The zoning bylaw amendment application has been reviewed in the context of the provincial policy statement, Chatham-Kent's official plan, and would be in full conformity with those documents if approved. Therefore, it is recommended that zoning bylaw amendment application file D14 BL 5223C to rezone the lands in part of Lot 11, Concession 1, Harwich, in the community of Blenheim, to residential low-density 4th, residential high-density 2nd, urban commercial, neighborhood commercial, and open space to facilitate a new residential subdivision together with neighborhood commercial and open space uses be approved and the implementing bylaw be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Before we get to deputations, I'll open up to questions to staff from council. Councillor Sakachi.
Just one comment, Acting Mayor. I did contact the Integrity Commissioner on this one just to see if I had a conflict because prior to this developer, it was owned by a family member. They have indicated that it is not a conflict. Because I do not have the email already in writing, I am just going to abstain from this one.
Noted. Any other questions?
Sorry, Acting Mayor, I did want to say that she did indicate that I had no conflict though. Okay.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to deputations. We'll start with the two that wrote in ahead of time.
Leonard Verhart. Hi, Leonard, please come forward, and you have 5 minutes for your deputation.
Good evening. I'm Leo Verhart. I've been a resident of this particular area for 50 years, Blenheim for 70 years. And I'm strongly opposed to any of this change. So I have a petition that's been signed by all the local residents of Chatham Road and Flamingo Street opposing this high rise, this high density, whatever they wanted to define it as. It amounts to 150 units per hectare, which would mean equivalent of 450 rental units in the town of Blenheim and only 174 actual single-family dwellings. It's all smoke and mirrors in my books. Now, the other thing that gets me, and it's a known fact that that property has been zoned for single-family dwellings for well over 25 years already, closer to 30, and not one person has decided to dig a basement in there. And now all of a sudden they want to go to a high-rise system. And what are they going to build? They're going to build the high-rises, and we still won't see single-family housing, which is what Blenheim is all about. A lot of the people that signed the petition are from high-rise areas and came to Blenheim to get away from it, not to move into it again. So a lot of it is, it's all in the petition that you should all have copies of by now because the clerk got it. What we're looking at in essence is a town that has a sewer system that was developed in the late 60s, installed in the early 70s for a town of 3,000 people. We've since added to it with all the Sharing Crosses sewage getting pumped to Blenheim to be handled by our lagoons. And the system was probably designed at a 25% excess capacity back at that time, in that era. And now we've already added to it where town is now at 4,000, and it's a 50-year-old system that's in need of major upgrades and improvements. And now this developer is asking to add 2,000 residents and 600, by my count, at least 624 family units in the area, most of that in high-rise towers, which in my case will block out any solar attempts that I already have going that I use to recover hydro. And for what? Somebody else just to make a profit. And there is no gain to it. The other thing is you're going to have, at 650 units, you're going to have 600 school children that need to get to the school, which is over a mile away. They can't walk. There's no sidewalks. There's nothing in the plan for that. There's no accommodation for that. The nearest loaf of bread for anybody living there, if they have to walk for it, is a mile away at a grocery store. There's nothing, there is no infrastructure there. It's in the middle of Blenheim's industrial area, and it should never have come up for this kind of rezoning in the first place. It makes no sense. It's only profitable sense for the guy building the high-rises. That's all it is. It's going to be an inconvenience. The people that get in there, the only real study that was done with the plan in the first place was a traffic study, which said, oh yeah, we can handle that. Well, how do you handle 2,000 residents on two small intersections when a town of 4,000 needs 2 stoplights just to get up and down the main street? None of it has been realistically presented. It's all been shown to show that, oh yeah, this is a good idea. And it's not. They've had almost 30 years to build houses there. It's been zoned single-family dwelling for the most part all this time, and nobody's built. Nobody wants to build. Nobody's given a reason as to why. It makes no sense. Anthony should know because he grew up on that property, and to my way of thinking, that's a conflict of interest if you're emotionally attached to it, regardless of what anybody else would say. There's details. There's no school busing out there. Every child that lives in there that's 600 school children we're gonna have to buy another fleet of buses just to supply that subdivision and get kids back and forth to school. There's no sidewalks. You have to go through an industrial park to get to the grocery store, which Industrial Ave has probably 200 to 300 people, employees working on it at RJ Equipment, Dorschers, Specialty Aluminum, the Cabinet Shop, Kent Fabricators, Apollo Construction. All these people work right directly across the street, and their access in and out is right directly across the street from where they're proposing this. In the map they show you, they don't show you where that actually is. That's not an area that was ever meant to have a residential growth. The town is not growing, and the last of our industrial property is there. The industrial property that Chatham-Kent put in a few years back on the northeast corner has been designated endangered species now from almost half of what's left of it. So you really have no industrial area left to work with. You have no infrastructure to service 2,000 people. You have no sidewalk availability. There is no bus service. The only bus service is the one that takes people from Chatham to shop in, from Blenheim to shop in Chatham and come home again at night.
That's time, Mr. Verhart. Thank
Okay.
you. Next speaker is Neil Mulder.
Good evening, Council. My name is Neil Mulder. I live on 5 James Street in Blenheim, just around the corner from Chatham and Flamingo. I've lived there for 29 years. It's been a nice, quiet neighborhood, and I really enjoy living there. But what's really concerning me is how they can change that light industrial zoning to high density in that area. The single-family homes off to the side, I don't believe they'll ever get built because it's quite a low area and it's really wet land. High density, sure, you can put in a good base and build up high. You're probably going to go around 15 stories high. The fire department doesn't have a fire truck that'll reach up that high. I concur with Leo in a lot of the aspects, and I'm just trying to expound on more of those ideas. And I don't see any studies done on any. I know where I've lived, I've seen lots of snakes in the background up over the railroad track there. Are there some on that other side of the road? Well, there may be. Has any studies been done? I don't know. I don't see any of it. If these approvals all get put in place, it's too late to do any of these other studies. I don't see any of that. I think it's a bad mistake to change that zoning. Single-family residence, semis, I don't see that as a problem so much. It's just a high-rise. This is one of my first times speaking in front of a council like this, so I'm a little bit nervous, so excuse me, but I don't see it as being a beneficial thing. It's just for profiteering. And now with, I was reading in the news the other day with GST being kicked back, that's going to make it more profitable for these big corporations. What about development fees? If there's 150 units in one of these high-rises, how much development fees are going to be paid? Is it just one on the building there, or is it 150 times what you would see for a normal residence or thereabouts? I don't understand where these numbers are coming from. I don't know where to go with it, like other than to speak out and start asking questions. And that's what I'm trying to do here. But I don't know if I'll get the answers or the approvals will get put in place and it's too late. Where do I go? Who do I ask? Will it be brought forth to the residents in the area? And I've seen a map that Leo has showed me, because Leo lives around the corner from me, where they only went around 150 meters or so around the property line, and there's some people on Chatham Street that aren't even included on there. And there's an apartment building at the end of Chatham there. There's one number there. Is that the owner of the building? He probably lives in Toronto. I don't know. Do the residents there get asked whether they approve of another big high-rise going right in beside them there? I don't know. Where do you go? How do you give the answers to the people who live in the area that really need to understand before the approvals are put in place? So that's why I'm opposed at this point to the rezoning of that light industrial. I worked in engineering. I know what light industrial is. I know what heavy industrial is. If I was to set up a company in Blenheim, where would I go to set up my company? On light industrial land, but you just took it away. Where would I go now? There's no place to go. So how do you grow on a community if you're just trying to make it as a rental income, or I don't believe the units will be sold. It's just for rental income, especially the high rise, high density. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's any other individuals or their agent present with an interest in the application, other than the applicant, if you can now please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, we'll now open it up for questions from council. If I can get a mover and a seconder. Councillor B. McGregor.
So moved.
If I can get a seconder. Councillor Pinsino.
I'll second it.
All right, is there any other questions from council? All right, want to give the applicant an opportunity to speak and respond as well. Thank you. Mr. French.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hall. I was waiting for the cue to put up my hand and it never came, but thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come and address council tonight. I appreciate the concerns of the neighbors, and they have been received and they have been considered by the development side. I'm available for questions tonight of staff based on either the staff report or the letters from the neighbors. But I would just like to highlight that it was suggested a couple times during the deputations that the lands are in fact light industrial. That is not the case. The lands are designated for residential development. And I would suggest even further that due to Ministry of the Environment, Climate and Parks guidelines that introducing an industrial use in that location in such proximity to the Chatham Street Flamingo neighborhood would be very difficult. The setbacks would not be met. But again, it's our position that the proposed draft plan is good planning. It's consistent with the provincial policy statement. It is in full conformity with the Chatham-Kent official plan. And we ask that the zoning to allow us to move forward to finalize the draft plan and bring it back to council be approved tonight. So thank you very much. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the applicant? Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hall. Mr. French, just to clarify, they were talking about apartment buildings, high-rise apartment buildings. So residential high density, I'm sure that's what they're talking about, RH2. What are we talking like? Are we talking like the downtown boardwalk? Or are we talking like 3-floor walk-ups, 2-floor? I'm just trying to understand.
Through Acting Mayor Hall to Councillor Crew, from the onset, it was the design to have higher density dwellings along the Nazarene and railroad track area. When the official plan policies were suggested and ultimately approved, density is based on the number of units per hectare, not necessarily the height. And by our calculations, it suggests we would submit that we'd probably see maybe 6-story buildings at that site. Taller buildings, we just could not fit them on the property because we still have to account for parking, et cetera. So,
thank you. I just wanted clarification on that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there any further questions from council to the applicant? All right, seeing none, we already have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation, and seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Finn?
Yes.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
Councillor C. McGregor?
Yes.
Okay, all votes are in, and we have a pass by 12-2. So we'll now move on to the presentation portion of the evening. Matt Torrance will introduce MPAC, the role of property tax and assessment system.
Good evening, Acting Mayor Hall and members of council. I am pleased to introduce Brenda Slater from the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. Brenda's here to provide an update on property assessment issues from within Chatham-Kent and around the province.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for having me here this evening. It is a pleasure to be here in person. I have done just over 18 council presentations this year, and I think only 3 were in person, so I'm very excited to be here tonight. As Matt had mentioned, I am your account manager with Municipal and Stakeholder Relations. At MPAC, we are Ontario's property experts. Our job is to assess and classify more than 5.5 million properties across Ontario, worth a combined value of more than $3 trillion. In the past year, Ontario has grown by approximately 45,000 new residential homes, and in 2022, we added more than $37 billion to Ontario's assessment rolls. For the municipality of Chatham-Kent, just as a point of interest, we added just over 370 new homes over the past 2 years. As well, with a combined new assessment total of more than $200 million for the municipality of Chatham-Kent. Every municipality uses our assessments to make informed decisions about their community, including the distribution of property taxes. Ontario's property tax system and these assessments generate approximately $30 billion in tax revenue annually. There are 4 key players in Ontario's property tax and assessment system, and all have a different role to play and all have a different interest. The provincial government, specifically the Ministry of Finance, is responsible for setting the assessment and taxation policy and legislation. There is also an independent body that adjudicates appeals of MPAC's assessment values, which is the Assessment Review Board, or the ARB. And the ARB also falls under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Finance. MPAC is an independent, not-for-profit corporation. We are funded by all Ontario municipalities. Our role is to accurately assess and classify all properties in accordance with the provisions of the Assessment Act and the various regulations. We are accountable to the province, to municipalities, to property owners and property taxpayers of Ontario through our Board of Directors. Our Board of Directors is comprised of provincial, municipal, and taxpayer representatives, and they are also appointed by the Minister of Finance. Municipalities determine their budget requirements, they set tax rates, and they collect property taxes to pay for municipal services. Municipalities use MPAC's assessments and their established tax rates to distribute their tax requirement to taxpayers. And property owners pay property tax bills and help to set the market value through ongoing property purchases and sales. As you can imagine, maintaining Ontario's property database is a very important job. Our property data is continuously updated so that municipal records are accurate when our municipal stakeholders are making important tax decisions. Maintaining Ontario's assessment database includes inspecting and assessing new construction, additions, and renovations promptly, responding to property owner inquiries, and working with property owners to help them understand their assessment. As well, we offer ongoing support to our municipalities. We have an online database, Municipal Connect, and that provides up-to-date assessment-related information for our municipal stakeholders. As well, we have statutory duties to complete requests for reconsiderations when a property owner has asked for a review of their assessment. The reassessment that was scheduled to occur in 2020 was postponed by the province to provide stability and certainty to Ontarians and enable municipalities to focus on responding to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The government announcement of a review of Ontario's property taxation and assessment system. This is a review of the system as a whole. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't read my notes and I've gone out of order. I'm going to back up a bit. In mid-August, the provincial government announced a review of Ontario's property taxation and assessment system and committed to deferring a reassessment until this review is complete. The government's announcement of a review of Ontario's property taxation and assessment system. This is a review of the system as a whole. And our team at MPAC is committed to working with the province as a partner to help provide guidance and improvements that will benefit all Ontarians. As a result of the pause, property assessments continue to be based on our legislated valuation date, which is January 1 of 2016. MPAC continues to maintain and update the assessment roll to reflect changes such as new construction and improvements to properties. For new buildings and structures, MPAC determines a value as of January 1, 2016 to ensure equity when comparing to existing properties. While MPAC awaits news from the provincial government about the next province-wide assessment update, January 1, 2016 continues to be Ontario's legislated valuation date. So this is our fixed date to which all properties are valued. Although the assessment update does remain paused, our work continues to keep property data up to date. Property owners will receive an updated property assessment notice from MPAC if there have been changes to their properties. In November of last year, we mailed just over 800,000 assessment notices province-wide. And for the municipality of Chatham-Kent, we mailed just over 8,000 property assessment notices in the fall. Once the province announces when the next assessment update will take place, and as well when the valuation date will be, we will let you know, and then we can certainly work to have meaningful conversations as we finalize the values within Chatham-Kent. After we assess or change a property assessment, we do mail, as I mentioned, property owners a new assessment notice. And at times, property owners may not agree with their new assessed value. A property owner may contact you and say that they disagree with their new assessment. It is important to remember that property assessments are not taxation. If you do get an inquiry, you can certainly ask the property owner if they've had an opportunity to visit About My Property, where they can view details about the assessment that we have on their property, and as well review the assessments of other comparable properties within their community. If a property owner disagrees with their assessment, they do have the opportunity to file a request for reconsideration. And the easiest way to do that is through our About My Property platform. There is also the ability to file an appeal with the Assessment Review Board. Currently, just as a point of interest, we have 13 outstanding requests for reconsiderations for the municipality of Chatham-Kent. Just a moment to talk about property taxes and the relationship between property taxes and assessment. Property assessments will distribute taxes. They do not determine the amount of taxes paid. When a province-wide assessment occurs, the one important factor is how much the assessed value of your property is. The most important factor is not how much the assessed value of your property has changed, but rather how the assessed value has changed in relation to other properties in your same class within your community. And this concept has been explained in a new digital toolkit that we shared with all municipalities earlier in the year, and it is available on our website as well. So again, we do have a lot of educational and support resources available to you at mpac.ca. We do have a number of videos available. We hosted a recent webinar on September the 7th, and that was about MPAC's role in the property tax and assessment system, and it was an update for municipalities. All of our webinars are available on our website, mpact.ca, as well. So as I mentioned, again, in anticipation of the next province-wide assessment update, we have introduced a strategy to have a number of resources available to try to address some of the misconceptions about the relationship between your assessed value and property taxation. And again, all of these resources available for yourselves as municipal officials on mpact.ca. We have a brand new video as well, how your property taxes are calculated based on the assessed value of your home. Just briefly sharing your local assessment base. So this is a snapshot of the assessment base for Chatham-Kent for the 2023 taxation year. And this is broken down by property code. So I'm just sharing for your interest the number of properties, the total assessed value they represent, and the percentage of your total assessment base. Thanks for having me here tonight. We always encourage you to stay in touch and stay informed. We do have an In Touch monthly e-newsletter, and you can subscribe on our website. As I mentioned, we have monthly webinars. We've been out to conferences. Many of you may have met my regional manager at the recent AMO conference. So we're always available to meet with you. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime if you have questions. And my contact information is here on the last slide. So thank you very much for having me here tonight.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Brenda. Open up for questions from council. Councillor Bondi, followed by Councillor Sakaji.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hall. Sorry, I find this very complicated. I don't think I'm alone, although I'm not that bright, but what I often hear is that if the property value, like if my assessment goes up, the assessment will come down somewhere else to balance it. Is that a myth? Like it's balanced so municipalities don't profit because, I guess what I'm getting at, what if you go to I don't know, Chatham or probably more likely Brampton or Mississauga and all the values have gone up because they all are just worth way more money than they were 5 years ago. So if my property taxes aren't going to increase much, they will a bit, of course, right, because the values are higher. How is that accomplished? Is that, like, is the mill rate of the municipality adjusted in order to keep the, like, your individual taxes kind of at bay?
Yeah. So
that's kind of a complicated question, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But.
Oh, if you can just put your microphone on, Brenda. Thank you.
And I talk really loud, so sometimes I don't.
I thought you were on.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So our role is to set the new assessment values. So once there is a new assessment update, and actually each year we deliver a new assessment roll to the municipalities. And then once the municipality has that assessment roll and the new assessment values, then it kind of moves over to their role to set the budget and set the local tax rates. So our role would be to determine the property assessment values, and then the municipalities would determine the tax rates.
Right. So if I'm assessed at, say, $200,000, and I haven't been assessed in some time, now my assessment might be $700,000. So just for, simply put, I would be rather concerned that my taxes would go up significantly. Just in simple math, your assessed value of my home times the mill rate equals my taxes. So if my assessed value tripled, and in many cases across Ontario, I'm sure it has tripled, how is that adjusted so that my tax bill isn't tripled? I guess I'm just trying to boil it down to like my level of grade 5 math.
Thank you, Councillor.
Lower.
So to add some clarity to this, so the reassessment is revenue neutral to the municipality. So the municipality receives no new revenue based on a reassessment. In your example, if your house went up 350% and all the houses in the municipality went up 350%, there would be no change. If your house went up 350% and the average was 500%, then your taxes would go down. The municipality gets no new revenue from reassessment. It's just a redistribution of the budget and who pays what.
Okay.
For example, if you lived on a waterfront property, maybe waterfront properties go up 500% and properties in Blenheim go up 300%. Well, the taxes in Blenheim would go down and the waterfront properties would go up.
Okay, so the mill rate's adjusted?
Yeah, we adjust the mill rate down.
Okay, that's kind of what I'm looking for. So it's the mill rate that's adjusted, and okay, this will sound sort of silly, but, so what's the point of this assessment? If it doesn't change the municipal, is it just for my benefit to know what I should sell my house for? Or, you know, if it doesn't change my taxes, then why bother with it?
Well, the way the
I know there's a good answer for that, so I apologize in advance, but.
The way the property tax system in Ontario is set up, is that properties that are worth more should pay more taxes. And there are trends over time. For example, sometimes farm prices go up or commercial buildings go up where residential doesn't. We're going through a period now where it appears residential prices are going up more than some of the other classes. So it's just adjusting for those differences over time. So typically they do an update every 4 years to account for those changes in the economic conditions of the property value market and to redistribute how taxes are collected.
Okay, sure, fair enough. One other quick question. How do you assess like a residential home? Is it based on, like, and again, this is just what I've heard. Do you look at what similar homes in like my neighborhood sold for? Is that part of the equation?
Yes, and thank you again for the question. So yes, it is. So for residential properties, it's based on the sales of similar properties within your community. And when we have a legislated valuation date, which right now is January 1, 2016, we have reviewed sales up to and including that date to determine those values. Once we know when the next reassessment will take place, then we'll have that window and we'll know which sales we'll be analyzing to determine the next reassessment values. So it's based on valid open market sales of similar properties within your community.
Okay, and one more quick question. Sorry, I'm gobbling up all the time here. If I was to refinish my basement, put in an in-ground pool, does that affect my assessment? That's outside of course, the sales of homes around me, but now my home is, I would think, more valuable with a finished basement and an in-ground pool.
So as I mentioned.
And if so, how would you know?
Yeah, again, thank you for the question. And again, so we are continually ensuring that our data is up to date. And one of the things that we do is every month we receive an updated list of all the building permits that have been issued for the municipality
Building
of
permits,
Chatham-Kent.
that'll do it.
And as well, we're also provided with occupancy dates as well and final inspection dates so that we know these building permits are complete and ready to assess. So for something like a finished basement, or as you mentioned, an in-ground pool, that may be something that we are able to do by reaching out to the property owner. We may stop by your home. We would leave a callback notice to let you know we've been at your property. We're there to assess the new building permits. And then we would determine, yes, there would be a change in your assessment as a result of those changes.
Okay, very helpful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And also, just to add, because I can be long-winded too, we do have the new video that doesn't explain that relationship between your assessment and taxation. And it also goes through if properties increase or decrease in comparison to each other, how that would impact the overall assessment. So it's a good video to watch. It's a few minutes and it might be helpful to explain as well.
Yeah, that'd be worth a watch for me. Okay, thank you. Thanks again.
Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hall. My questions are kind of straightforward. When I agree, when I first was elected, it was a challenging aspect to go through what, our budget, then what the impact, in kind of getting the relation. And, I understand like the 200 factors you guys look at and the 5, main factors. I guess the only thing I'm not understanding, and I haven't understood, is that for 4 years, generally speaking, you were reassessing on a regular basis. I know that you've kind of touched base on the exercises that you guys are completing now. I just don't really understand completely. I hear paused or we're just not currently assessing. I'm just having a hard time, and when I get asked this, to understand why we're 4 years behind and going to be 5 years behind. Is it like process changing completely, or because 4 years behind, 5 years, I can assure you, if our exercises were like 4 or 5 years behind, I'm pretty confident that we would be having some turbulence somewhere, right? So there's a lot of the residents that are kind of inquiring to see kind of why the process has been paused, and that's something I've never really been able to explain. So I think it'd be a great time to kind of hear why the process has changed and why we are paused.
Thank you for the question as well. So as I mentioned, the Ministry of Finance paused the reassessment that was scheduled in 2020 to ensure that, to provide some stability and certainty to everyone and to allow municipalities to deal with the pressures from the COVID-19 pandemic. In the fall, or earlier this year, the Ministry of Finance again decided to pause the next assessment update, and they also initiated a review of the property assessment and taxation system. And we don't, at this point, we don't know the full scope of that review, but we will certainly share that when we have that information. And as well, we don't have the timing in terms of how long that review will take. But these were decisions that the Ministry of Finance had made. In the meantime, as I mentioned, MPAC continues to ensure that our data is up to date. We continue to update and assess new construction in a timely manner. We continue to conduct sales investigations so that when we do get that announcement for the next reassessment, our data is up to date and our information is available and ready.
Yeah, thanks. And just to follow up, because how I normally see things, if you're taking, 8 years to review, chances are there's going to be potentially a significant change in how things is probably going to get done. If it's not, then I guess I really don't understand the delay. But that's, I guess, not for us to understand. It's a totally different entity. It's just a question that we field on a regular basis. And like I said, usually if something's paused that long, there's potentially significant groundwork being touched base on, but maybe that's just not the case, and it's just it just seems like it's a long time, right? So I have businesses that reach out on a regular basis to asking about reassessments. I know some people that have went through the process of kind of the appeal process and that, and it just seems to be a question that I ask, and I know that there's been a lot of growth, so that's probably been a significant challenge for you folks over there as well. It's just, it's nice to have a little substance to respond back to the residents in regards to why was it last done in 2016, and, is it going to happen again, right? So thank you very much.
Councillor Anderson, followed by Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, and through you, Acting Mayor Holt. I had similar questions as Councillor Scotchy, but I guess, from what I understand as being a new councillor, we rely on the most up-to-date MPAC report to base how we adjust for our taxes among the different classifications of land. So if we're only doing individual pieces and we aren't doing an entire MPAC report, how are we supposed to navigate budget without having the most up-to-date accuracy of the classifications and how those balance amongst each other? There's got to be a difference from 2016 to now. And I can definitely appreciate that you're still doing individual assessments of individual places, but I also have people saying to me, well, I'm a resident, I had my new MPAC report because I'm a new build. I'm now paying this much in my taxes based on my MPAC report, but my neighbor next door to me who's in a 50-year-old house hasn't had an up-to-date MPAC report and they're only paying X amount of dollars, right? So how do we properly adjust when we aren't getting that new MPAC report for the actual classifications of land and what their new market value is?
So thank you for the question. So when we are in a non-reassessment year, we still have to ensure that our data is up to date. And when we're capturing new assessment, we're still determining their value as of January 1, 2016, so that everyone is still valued as of that date. And then each year, we do provide our municipalities with an annual assessment roll, and that includes all of the new assessment that we've captured this year, all of the changes that we've captured this year as well. And so that's provided to the municipalities every year so that they do have an up-to-date assessment base. I shared the 2023 assessment base. When we wrap up for this year, we deliver the assessment roll second Tuesday in December. They will have a brand new assessment base to start 2024 taxation. And that will include all of the, like I said, all of the new construction and all of the changes to the properties that we've done this year.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess maybe my question maybe is for Gord or for Matt then. And talking about tax ratios, right? So we directly formulate our tax ratios based on our MPAC report, right? So if we wanted to change a tax ratio without the most up-to-date MPAC report, we're obviously still going for the one from 2016, correct? So how would we then fluctuate and accommodate a change in our tax ratios across the board if we don't have an up-to-date MPAC report?
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and thank you for the question. I did want to add some comments at the end, but I think with this introduction, I'll just add them now. Let Brenda off the hook a little bit. She works for MPAC. They've been told by the province to delay this reassessment and to have this tax review. It did make sense at the immediate time in COVID where MPAC representatives couldn't enter a house to evaluate a new basement being finished or any of those types of things. It's getting a little bit ridiculous now, if I can say so, but it's not directed at MPAC, it's just directed at the Ministry of Finance. And having our tax bills based on 2016 data, when we all know what's happened to different classes, whether it's farmers, residential, commercial, industrial, they've all changed since 2016, and they haven't all changed equally, and they haven't all changed equally across Chatham-Kent. Like one urban center might have had a higher increase in assessment than another, and none of that data is coming through to your tax bills until the Ministry of Finance now completes their review, which they haven't stated what they're reviewing or how long it will take, and then directs MPAC with a date, a reassessment date, and update all the figures. So we don't know if this is going to be 2025, 26, 27. We really have no idea when. So we could have 10, 12 years go by of working on old assessment data. That's a problem. But it's revenue neutral to the municipality. So it doesn't affect our budget. It's revenue neutral. But somebody's paying too much and somebody's paying too little, and none of it can be fixed till reassessment comes through. But again, that's not MPAC's issue. That's Ministry of Finance's issue, and the Municipal Finance Officers Associations and others are lobbying. Now that it's been announced that this review is going to happen, what can we do to help? Let's get it done and get to the other side of this.
Thank you, Gordon, through you, Acting Mayor. Yeah, I agree with you in the fact of there's definitely those that are paying too much and those that aren't paying enough. And I think that not having accurate data to facilitate a proper budget and a proper plan of how taxpayer dollars are spent and collected is a major challenge. And unfortunately, it is something that is out of our control and MPAC's control as well. So I hope that we get some good news of the review being completed soon.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Acting Mayor. I was wondering if we could go back to slide number 10 there for a moment. Yes, that one. I apologize for putting you on the spot like that. There we are. Thank you very much. And I appreciate and really enjoyed the presentation, Ms. Slater. But for somebody sitting at home, that assessment base there might give the false interpretation that residential pays 43.76% of the tax in Chatham-Kent. But that's not actually what that's saying, correct?
Thank you for the comment and the question. So that is taking a look at the total assessment for the municipality of Chatham-Kent. And residential properties represent 43.76% of that assessment.
Okay.
So that's how your assessment pie is broken down. So to
Right,
speak.
so that's the piece of the pie that all of the residential properties make up. Yeah, all the properties make up in Chatham-Kent. Thank you. So I guess my follow-up question, just for clarification, because I know people at home, again, could be coming to that erroneous assumption. I'll take the next one, for example. Maybe Gord could answer. The farm properties, 43% of the total portfolio, but what's the tax burden for agriculture properties?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So of course, we then assign ratios to this, and currently we're assigning 0.22 to farm properties. So that's how, yes, they have 43% of the assessment, but they have approximately 10% of the tax.
Okay, thank you. And we set tax ratios each and every year, right?
Yes, every spring, first meeting in April usually, we come to council to review and set tax ratios.
It's often a pretty dry report and without a lot of conversation, but I think it's a more important one actually than the budget is our tax ratio, because that's the multiplier that sets your personal home and business tax. So I just wanted to point that out because that flew by in a flash, and if you were watching at home, I didn't want folks thinking that industrial is paying 3.6% of the tax burden when that's not the case. So thank you very much.
And I'll just add to answer one of your previous questions. The residential works out to around 64%, and then if you add in the multi-residential at its ratio, it gets around about 68% is paid by residents.
For folks who struggled in math like me, there's a lot of numbers, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Is there any other further questions from council? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation and comments, Ms. Slater. All right, we'll move on to the notices of motion portion of the agenda, and I think we have two, and I'm going to do mine first, and then we'll move to Councillor Anderson. So I, Councillor Aaron Hall, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the September 25th, 2023 council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas council unanimously approved the 2023-2027 strategic plan for the current council term at the September 11th, 2023 council meeting, and whereas council collectively identified 4 priority areas in the plan, including delivering excellent service, growing our community, promoting community safety and well-being, and ensuring environmental sustainability. And whereas within the environmental sustainability priority, council has committed to leading by example to reduce our climate footprint, enhancing community resiliency to climate change impacts, and also preserving natural heritage. And whereas the previous term of council, through the Natural Heritage Committee of the Whole, was presented with a tremendous amount of information, community feedback, data, and examples of best practices from across Ontario in relation to natural heritage policy. And whereas in February 2022, the Natural Heritage Committee of the Whole approved departing from the status quo approach to woodlot conservation and to also investigate further the education, incentive, and regulation woodlot preservation instruments. And whereas the municipality is currently developing a climate change action plan, and an update on the plan is expected to be before council in the near future. And whereas having a clear-cutting bylaw in place since April of 2021 has proven to be effective in deterring clear-cutting activities, while natural heritage policy discussions have taken place across the community. And whereas historically, having natural heritage conversations in a public forum without a clear-cutting regulation in place has proven to be detrimental to Chatham-Kent's natural heritage, resulting in clear-cutting activities. Therefore, be it resolved that 1, council direct direct administration to create a schedule and work plan moving forward to carry on with the Natural Heritage Committee of the Whole work. 2, this work plan will be rooted in transparency, creating opportunities for public consultation and feedback throughout the process. 3, the schedule will be presented to Council for consideration by January 2024. 4, the work by the Committee of the Whole pick up where it left off following the previously approved decision tree matrix, which was paused in March of 2022. And 5, bylaw number 72-2021 remain in place until repealed by Council only after the Natural Heritage Committee of the Whole has made recommendations to Council for approval in regards to the regulatory instrument for woodlot conservation. Thank you, and I'll hand over to Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I, Councillor Lauren Anderson, bring forward the following motion for consideration and voting tonight, September 18th, 2023. Whereas the fire at the Wheatley Water Plant subsequently triggered a boil water advisory and a need for prompt, accurate, and up-to-date information sharing to affected residents from the municipality during times of emergencies has been identified, and the limitations that Bill C-18 on information sharing capabilities of news sites on Meta-owned social media platforms, and that effective communication was an identified issue in 2020 with a boil water advisory in Tilbury and Wheatley. Be it advised that administration look into a mass information sharing system through instant alerts, text messaging, and or automated phone calling system for pricing and the availability to implement such services as soon as possible and report back to Council at the earliest possible time. Further, that a media awareness campaign of available communications to residents begin immediately with the goal of creating awareness of the methods of information sharing available through the municipality to the general public at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Judy, we have to deal with the waiving of notice first, right?
Correct. So the first motion that's on the screen right now is that Council waive the requirement to allow the motion of Councillor Anderson's to be voted on this evening, and that's strictly what will be at vote now, and it requires a 2/3 vote, so due to 15 people being in attendance, it will require at least 10 votes. We will require a seconder, yes.
All right, do I have a seconder for Councillor Crew seconds motion? Any questions from Council related to the waiving of notice? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Finn
Yes.
and Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
We have the vote 15-0, so we can proceed. Thank you.
All right, now that we can move on, can I get a seconder for Councillor Anderson's motion, Councillor Crew? So I have a mover, seconder. Councillor Anderson, do you have further comments?
Sure. I mean, I think that the motion kind of explains itself, and I think that anyone through administration or on council has received several emails since the boil water advisory and the fire that has happened in Wheatley. I think that better communication is never a bad thing. I think there's always room for improvement, and I think that it definitely warrants the conversation, especially we're in a time where the best communication possible is needed. I had several people that were saying that they didn't even know about the boil water advisory till several days later, despite, I mean, us having, I think there was ample effort to get communication out there, and I think that it's just a matter of, that's why the end there of having a media blitz out to like say how you find this information and how we get it to you is really, really important. And I think that if we can do some sort of mass advisory within, the laws of the Municipal Act, I think that it's important to look at, and I think that it's something we should definitely explore at this time.
Michael?
Yeah, thank you, Your Acting Worship. So, I mean, I don't get a vote, but I absolutely support the motion. I mean, we're always looking for ways that we can communicate with as many people as possible. There'll never be one answer. Even if there's an electronic solution, most of them, other than the alerts that we get, which people can turn off, that you get from the province, this will probably be some sort of a subscription method where people have to sort of agree to be part of it. So we know that even if people do agree to be a part of it, we're still going to have to find other ways to communicate and cover as much ground as we can. So I think exploring something like this, and I understand before my time something like this did come forward to council, but wasn't accepted at that time. So it'll absolutely help us to get the message out. We did, I don't mind, sharing with the group. We've had a couple of EOC meetings, obviously, to help our friends out at the commission. And we did talk about if we get to a point where the testing, you've probably seen in the media that the testing is just being completed today, I think. Right now, there's really very little to no risk, especially in Tilbury, because the water pressure in Tilbury never got to a point of any concern at all, thankfully. And that's thanks to our friends in Leamington, thanks to the hard work of the folks at the commission. There are a number of reasons why we're able to maintain the pressures up in Tilbury. But just to be cautious, public health, and I agree with them, felt that there needs to be a boil water advisory. We knew we wouldn't get to everybody, but we just further mitigate the risk to more people that are made aware. So I support this idea. I think it's something that if it's not for boil water advisory, who knows? What's going to come up in the future, where having some method to get to people is going to be helpful. So I appreciate the motion, and staff will certainly bring something forward as we've been directed to, if it passes.
Thank you, Michael. Is there any other further questions from council? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
Councillor Finn?
Yes.
All votes are in, and motion passes 15-0.
All right, moving on to non-agenda business. We'll start with Councillor McGrail, followed by Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Pinsino.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hall. I just want to take a second to say, wow, oh my gosh, good for Dresden, and congratulate them on another successful Terry Fox run. You know, that little town somehow just every year outdoes itself. You know, more than $48,000 raised in one day in Dresden. So I think, you know, that town deserves a big praise, but also, you know, Tilbury and everywhere else that had their Terry Fox, like what a great day it was, and for what a great cause. Thank you.
Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Pinsino.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Chair. I did send Edward a couple of questions prior to the meeting. Edward, I received over the weekend several questions and inquiries regarding Memorial Arena in Chatham. Several people approached me and said that they had heard that there was going to be delays in repairs, which we were updated just prior to the meeting that there actually is going to be some delays in repairs. Is it possible to give us an update on when the expectation is for Memorial Arena to open up?
Thank you. Through the acting mayor to the councillor, I appreciate the question. We have been waiting on some parts to arrive, and we got them today, so it does push back our schedule by about 4 days. So our anticipated opening is moving from the 26th to Saturday, September the 30th. Our staff is on site working with the contractor, and they'll be making sure that the ice gets the ice makings in place as soon as we possibly can. We are going to be notifying the various user groups of the changes to their permits as the project progresses. So we see about a 4-day delay right now.
And just to follow up on that briefly in regards to Erickson Arena, there's also been some concerns in regards to the behind the net not freezing properly and it being basically bare, some cement patches. Is that just because of the current weather conditions outside, or is there a deficiency that's been noted at that arena as well?
Thank you again through the acting mayor. We did get 2 complaints about that. It's not really a deficiency, it's just a lot of use of the ice in that area. It gets chewed up pretty good when you have so many teams utilizing it for practice. So we had our certified ice technician go out there to look at the system and the ice itself. He has determined it's safe, so at this point it's really just about an overuse issue there.
And just lastly, for the public as well, I've had a couple emails today regarding the cost that is going into that. I know that council's been basically provided an estimate of the cost. Is there a report going to be coming to council in regards to what was, I know it was approved in the life cycle, but is there going to be a report coming to the public in regards to how much we've spent on it, or total, or how does that work when it's something that's within the approval aspects of our purchasing agreement?
Thank you to the acting mayor. I believe this is an emergency expenditure. So as per our purchasing policy, we do come back to council once it's done and provide you with an update of all the costs associated with it.
Perfect, thank you.
Councilor Pincinel, followed by Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'd like to send a big shout out to the organizers and the volunteers at the Thamesville Car Show. We hit our maximum number of vehicles. We couldn't put any more down there. And the crowd was big. They did an awesome job, and thanks to all of them, and it was great for our little town. Thank you.
Councilor Anderson, followed by Councilor Wright.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that today kicked off Legions Week, so I wanted to wish a happy Legions Week to all the Legions in our region. I was happy to get to participate in the drumming ceremony in Tilbury that hosted this year. There was 10 different branches of Legions that were there, and it was really awesome to see everybody come together and pull off a ceremony like that at the Cenotaph. So well done, Tilbury Legion, Branch 206, and to everybody else that participated in that. Also, to a big thanks to Mark Oche and Lynn Oche for their efforts in the Terry Fox Run. That was also very successful this year. So well done, and thank you for your volunteer services once again on that. And then I just wanted to take some time to ask some questions about the fire in Wheatley. What can we expect for the boil water advisory timeline? And I know that comes from public health, but it's based on pressure, am I correct? So if the pressure is sustained, when can we expect the boil water advisory to be lifted?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hall. Thank you, Councillor Anderson, for the question. So as I think it was our CAO, Michael Dubin, already indicated, samples were done today. So when those results come back, we typically look for just 2 rounds of samples where the water is all clear, and then the boil water will be, we'll look at lifting that boil water order. One of the things within public health that we are not willing to budge on is the safety of our water. And so we need those clear samples before we will lift that boil water order. So we're crossing our fingers that all those samples come back and they are good, and then we will be able to move forward with that.
Great, and thank you so much, April. Further, they'll obviously continue testing, and if there is a loss of pressure for any reason, that would warrant an emergency test rather than just the routine testing, correct?
So what we look at from a public health perspective, we'd have to have Tim answer some of the questions in terms of the loss of pressure. Anytime the pressure dips down to an area of concern, then there is always the chance of contaminants getting into the system. And so while it only went down to that area of concern for a very short period of time, like I said, water is something we are not willing to really risk. And so anytime that happens, what will be happening going forward is that both the PUC and public health will be very closely monitoring the system, monitoring that pressure, doing the ongoing testing, and we will be keeping a very close eye on that to ensure that the water stays safe. And as soon as we have those clear samples, we'll be able to look at lifting that boil water. But it does have to do with the pressure, and that's the reason why we're asking people to conserve water as well, to help maintain that pressure.
I think our CEO wanted to add some comments as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that my colleague said. I just want to make it clear, we haven't had any unclear samples. Okay, what we mean is when we're testing, we have to have at least usually 24 hours in between if we're doing 2 sets. that they have to come back clear. So we're not testing because we've had any unclear samples, so the water, as far as we know, is safe, but because there was a drop in pressure, and I agree with April that really these are probably questions that the PUC can answer. But I understand that if you get anywhere near the 20 PSI, then that's a challenge. And you'd like to be 50 PSI and above. And we've been able to maintain that for Tilbury throughout. But in Wheatley's case, we did have a drop at some time, hence the caution. And I agree with April, we absolutely need to show caution. So I don't want anyone to think that we've had any unclear samples. We haven't. We're just doing the testing because that's the protocol in these types of situations.
Thank you, and I certainly appreciate the extra effort that has gone into this, both from Public Health and the PUC. I want to quickly ask about the 1-year timeline for the building, and I know that's probably a question more for the PUC as well. However, I mean, there's been talks about a mobile treatment plant, and what does that look like? Also, I mean, what's the cost to have the renovations and or new building and or mobile? And is that a cost to the taxpayers? Is this insurance? I just have like so many questions coming through that I'm kind of filtering through everyone.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. We don't have the answer to those questions at this point in time. We can certainly ask Tim Sunderland to come to the next council meeting if necessary to answer some of those questions. I believe he's having a meeting himself with his commission. So some of you that sit on the commission will hear some of that discussion. I think it's just too early to say. You are correct. There are some mobile options, and I know that's being pursued by the commission, but I don't know any information about how long that will take. When I made the comment about Leamington, we have been able to, through I think they're called interconnections. We've been able to get some help from Leamington as well as one of the PUC facilities somewhere else in Chatham-Kent. So that is the reason why we've been able to maintain the pressure at this point in time. So we'll get answers for you from the PUC as quickly as we can, but we just don't have that yet. I will say that I know well, it's probably fairly known to council. I believe we have to pay $250,000 is our deductible. So that applies to the PUC as well. If you're building a new plant, it's going to cost you more than $250,000. So I can answer that with some certainty without even knowing what the cost of the plant will be. So right now, I think they're focusing more on the emergency. And then, very soon, I think you'll have some answers in terms of what their long-term plans are.
Thank you so much, and I can certainly appreciate there not being all of the answers right now, as these things definitely take time. I guess my very last question, and this is one that maybe is for Mr. Taylor. Places that use a lot of water, such as greenhouses or fish plants, what can they expect? They've been asked to consume water, and I believe they're trying to use their water mostly just at the off-peak hours. But that's obviously not something that is sustainable for them for a very long time. There's been discussions about bringing in tanks of water for them to be able to use. And I guess my question that I'm getting from them is that then a cost to them personally, or is that a cost that the municipality takes on, or the PUC?
Acting Mayor, maybe I can answer that, and if there's anything that Mr. Taylor feels he can add, please feel free to do so. So we call that group the large water users. We have been in touch with all the large water users. We were early on, and there's been, in fact, economic development has sort of been appointed as the contact people with our large water users. So many of them are making arrangements to have portable water provided to them. And so right now, that's the path we're going down. You are correct that may not be a long-term sustainable solution for them. So that's something that the PUC is going to continue to work with them on. We have asked those groups to conserve, especially early on in the emergency, because we didn't know how much pressure we'd have and how long we can sustain the pressure. So I would suggest that this is all very fluid. Sorry, but I think it's all very fluid at this point in time in terms of once we have a better idea of how much pressure we can maintain. In terms of the long-term cost, obviously those large users would not be paying for the, at least on the usage side, they wouldn't be having to pay for the water from the PUC. So at least the delivery of the water itself as a consumable, that's something that I don't think they'd have a claim for. I think the discussion beyond that is probably one that the commission has to have. If it becomes a long-term situation, they'll have to look at what they'll continue to bill people for or not. And I know they haven't made that decision yet because they haven't even had a meeting yet. So, but our understanding is, and I don't know if Bruce has any updated information, but the few companies that we have been in touch with, I know in the short term, the mobile solution does seem to be working for them. But I think, well, like I said, we're going to have to keep our eye on that and explore that as the next, the days and weeks go by. I don't know, Bruce, did you want to add anything? I don't know if you have anything to add.
Thank you so much. And just finally, I want to give my thanks to Leamington, our neighboring municipality, for stepping up and helping out, and also to all the other wards that have been obviously helping us keep the water pressure up so that Wheatley and Tilbury still have water. We just are in a boil water advisory, so it can definitely be a lot worse. Also, I want to take a moment to always thank our first responders, Station 19 and Station 20, that were there on site, and also Windsor-Essex EMS that were on site that day. And I think that, they're imperative to making sure that the damage that was sustained, although significant, wasn't catastrophic. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, followed by Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Ridgetown this weekend on Saturday is hosting the Hot Rod for Hospice. The Ridgetown Roadrunners Car Club is putting this on. They're welcoming the community out, whether you got a car or you just want to participate in it. They're looking for a good crowd to try to make this a great success. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crew, followed by Councillor Story.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hall. First of all, I would, two things. I would just like to give a shout out to Family Service Kent and their Grand Parade on Saturday. They had a very successful event, and I want to thank everybody that supported us and made it successful. It supports seniors programs in our community, so it goes into that vein of funding. So it's really needed in our community. I also want to, next week is Orange Shirt National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th. And I'm sorry, the letters are small. It's meant to raise awareness about the impacts of colonization, including residential schools, on Indigenous peoples, families, and communities. And we encourage municipal staff to wear orange. So what I'm saying, that maybe next Monday that we can all wear orange in honor of Truth and Reconciliation Week. On Tuesday, September 26th at 11:30, there is a flag raising and a walk. So they're meeting at the Deshkina Zibi, I'm sorry, little letters, Deshman Zibi Indigenous Hub, and walking here to the Civic Center for a flag raising. That starts at 11:30. So anyone that wants to participate, you're welcome to do so. And then on Friday, there is Orange Shirt Day and Story Time at the library, and that's at 10 a.m. And then on Friday again, also, it's in Wallaceburg. It's a healing walk and gathering, and that starts at the Wallaceburg Library. And you can find more information about this on the DIJ Inclusion and Justice website. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Three quick items. First, just a reminder that this Wednesday night is the public consultation for the downtown development proposal. So would love to have folks from the community come out to the Bradley Center 6:30 to 8 p.m. to share your feedback. It's really important that we hear what you have to say on this really important project. And thanks to everyone who came out last week, specifically from the arts and culture and library communities, to share their feedback. It was really helpful, and thanks to all the staff who did a lot of great work preparing for that evening. I know it's a big job, so I really appreciate staff's help with that and for Wednesday. Secondly, I just wanted to give a note of sincere congratulations as the Accessibility Council Liaison to Mr. Dan Kobilka, who was recently honored by the Chatham Minor Baseball Association for his work for over 30 years in the Challenger Baseball program in our community. He has really been instrumental in bringing this program to Chatham for kids and adults with special needs to play baseball. So he's also up for the TD Blue Jays MVP Award. So I'm wishing Mr. Kobilka good luck with that and thanking him for his service to our community. And last but not least, just a quick question to build on Councillor Anderson's remarks to April. Would you mind, just for the folks at home, repeating the phone number they can call if they have any questions for the boil water and what type of information they can get? Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hall. So the number for the water advisory line is 519-436-3250. And that line is available. It is a recorded message with the current up-to-date information that we have with respect to the water advisory. Individuals calling that line there's information on there to redirect them to the website. And there's also the ability for individuals to leave a message, and a public health staff will return their call and answer any questions that they have. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the next part of our agenda, which is the reading of the bylaws. The first and second reading, if I can get a mover and a seconder, Councillor Allen and Councillor Bondi. Can I get you to move in second?
Happy to move it. And happy to second it, Acting Mayor Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Third and final reading, mover and seconder, Councillor Jubenville and Councillor Doyle.
I so move.
I will second that.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. And the final item, the resolution of council and closed session adjournment. Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I, Councillor Crew, move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Thursday, September 21st, 2023, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act. I so move.
Seconded by Councillor B. McGregor. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Meeting adjourned.